4 years ago, a 15-year-old British Muslim named Shamima Begum left home to join the Islamic State. Just recently, she was found in a Syrian refugee camp. She was 9 months pregnant, and she had told a journalist that she wanted to return to the UK. So, what did the British people think about this? Oh, shit. 90 fucking 9! I can't say this surprised me, even though a few hours on YouTube would have you believe Britain is a nation blinded by political correctness, postmodern neo-Marxism and virtue signalling Islamophoby. Shortly after giving birth to her third child, Shamima had her citizenship revoked by the British Home Secretary, despite her having no other nationality, a move which could be a violation of international law. I want to talk about why this was a bad decision, but I know better than to make any appeal to things like, emotion and sympathy. Instead, I'm going to look at the situation through the eyes of one of YouTube's finest, Paul Joseph Watson. A man so insecure he needs to stand 2 inches in front of the camera just to make himself look bigger. He must be good because he's got a video called The Truth about the ISIS bride. And he's a journalist. Hang on, who does he journalize for? Fucking InfoWars. Let's have a look at InfoWars, shall we?
It was just a mindless act of evil. It does happen sometimes where you just get mentally deranged people who are hopped up on whatever SSRI drugs. The Batman shooter, he claimed he was motivated by a movie.
All right, let me stop you.
He wanted to become the Joker.
Let me stop you. We've got breaking news here, Paul Watson, that's absolutely critical, absolutely key. I have gotten this. No cameras, please, guys. No cameras. This is from a law enforcement source. And the information is, the news is lying. FBI HRT did the hit on the guy, and they found Antifa information in the room and photos of the woman in the Middle East. So he did not kill himself. The FBI hostage rescue team killed him because he was firing on them. So he did not want to be taken alive, and reportedly he did it. And it was Antifa crap everywhere. And other things I'm not supposed to mention. That is directly from the hostage rescue team, by the way, Paul. And I'm going to delete this information now. Keep going.
Well, obviously, that's huge. That's huge if it turns out to be true.
Yeah, hey, Paul, this is from high-level CIA, right here. That's directly from, and this is from the hostage rescue team. I don't make sources up.
Anyway, let's see what he has to say.
I'm a jihadi, get me out of here. ISIS. Free housing and child benefits. ISIS don't pay child benefits. Shamima settles back into the British lifestyle. Severed heads. Shamima. I'ma join ISIS, lol. UK government. No more citizenship. Shamima. What?
Wait, people actually like this guy? Okay. So besides practicing his revolutionary comedy routine of reading out memes, most of his video is, well, it's an appeal to emotion, where he says things like,
The group that throws gay people off buildings.
And
An Islamic terror group that burns people alive in cages.
Now, I could mention that when she was in the news 4 years ago, the consensus was that she was a victim. She was legally a child when she left, and it is well known that she had been groomed online, as had the 2 other girls who left with her. The Metropolitan Police have also come under fire because they were aware that girls in the area were being groomed, but neglected to tell the parents. But I won't go down this road because, well, Paul doesn't mention it. Instead, I thought I'd make the argument on, logic and science things. There are a couple of attempted facts in the video, like the claim that she named her son Jarrah after a historic jihadi warlord.
She named him after a jihadi warlord infamous for massacring Jews and slaughtering infidels.
Well, that sounds bad. I don't remember her mentioning that in the interview, so let's maybe have a look at the article and see what they have to say. Oh, there we go. A historian has claimed. That's a good start. Historian and author Tom Holland said, if she'd wanted to signal that she was returning to Britain in peace, she might have considered naming her baby after someone other than Abu Ubaidah ibn al... Oh, God. Well, let's scroll further down this article. Paul must have done that because he's a journalist. Oh, no, wait. First, there's no mention of her saying why she chose this name. Second, if you look at the name of this 7th century warlord and look where the name Jarrah is, it's at the end. I'm sorry to say this, but the Muslims, they're not so different, they and we. This is a surname. Notice Al-Jarrah, which traditionally means the name of an ancestor, so not even the warlord's father. So, if we ignore the fact that Jarrah is actually quite a common Arabic name, Shamima Begum has named her child after some guy who was around before Islam was even founded. But I suppose these details are quite easy to miss for a busy man like you, Paul. Maybe if you just read the words like you do with the fucking memes! The article also tries to say that Jarrah means able fighter or one who wounds, which is simply a lie. I know people who speak Arabic, and the most common translation for Jarrah refers to a kind of clay vase that you use to carry water. She named her kid Vaz, okay? If we're going by the name of this 7th century warlord, Paul should really be more worried about people called Abu, or just anyone who shares a name with any crusader like Richard or Robert, or you get the idea. So, okay, Paul's cited an article which is citing a prominent British historian talking absolute shit, but I mean, really, what's in a name anyway? Isn't that right, Paul Joseph Watson? Just to avoid any confusion, the full name of that man pictured on the left is Paul Joseph Goebbels. Anyway, this is a pretty inconsequential segue, but I'd just been assured by other YouTubers that the best way to discredit people like Paul is to just read their own sources. He also cites Brendan O'Neill, who says Shamima is cleverly exploiting a culture that she knows full well exists in modern Britain. Ah yes, that famous multicultural far-left Islamophilia. 90 As for international laws on citizenship, well, Paul does take a crack at this, apparently by reading a tweet by some guy.
So Shamima Begum is nothing to do with Bangladesh, despite being of Bangladeshi heritage and born to a Bangladeshi mother because she was born on British soil. Shamima Begum and her entire family can go fuck themselves.
Yeah, that's it. That's international law that Paul's just made up. Of course, this is absolute shit because her baby was born before she was stripped of her citizenship, and therefore, according to legal experts, i.e. not random people on Twitter, her child is a British citizen. Okay, let's see what else he has to say.
We made the mistake before of letting Islamic terrorists back into the country, and it didn't go so well. The Royal Navy rescued Salman Abedi from Libya and brought him back into the UK 3 years before he carried out the Manchester bombing. Let's not make that mistake again, because the cost is too horrific to even consider.
Oh, there we go. In the last 30 seconds of the video, national security. Paul reminds us of Salman Abedi, who was rescued by the Royal Navy in Libya and allowed back into the UK 3 years before he killed 22 people and maimed 139 others in the Manchester bombings. But he doesn't say how Salman was let back into the UK and why he wasn't monitored, even though he was a suspected terrorist. Was it because he'd found a place in the gooey hearts of snowflake millennial border patrol officers? No. Let's look into why that happened, shall we? It was already known that Salman Abedi had connections with Libyan jihadists. They had been in Manchester since the 90s, living as anti-Gaddafi exiles who were strictly monitored by MI5. But in 2011, when Britain joined the war against Gaddafi, these suspected terrorists were weaponized by the British state. Their control orders were lifted, their passports returned to them, and they were even kept in touch with MI5 officers who vouched for them when they had problems with counter-terrorism police on their way to Libya. So this is fucking mental. In part of their total failure of military intervention, the British forces lifted their restrictions on the Abedi family, knowing full well that they had military experience and even that they knew how to build bombs. I suppose it's hardly news that Western forces would form alliances with jihadists when it suits them, but this seems to explain why a known potential terrorist like Abedi was allowed to fly so smoothly between Libya and Manchester. Or at least it's a far better explanation than they let him in because diversity. Anyway, I've linked a source below which explains this in a lot more depth. But Paul doesn't strike me as someone who cares much for details, so I could just say, well, Bin Laden was made stateless by Saudi and the US in the 90s, and that went well, didn't it? But Shamima's case is different from Abedi's and from Bin Laden's, mainly because she doesn't have a wealth of British and American-sponsored military experience, and because we don't know what she's done. It's a glaring hypocrisy that comes from people who wave rule of law with one hand and execution without trial with the other. It also completely bins any opportunity for security forces to learn from what happened to her. Begum was one of 8 girls from the same school who left to join ISIS that year, and even when the police knew what was happening, they didn't know how to stop it. No one would know better about how these girls were groomed than she does. That's not even to mention that ISIS themselves are still a very obscure group, and she will almost definitely know things about how they operate that we don't. Paul and others are completely ignoring the security risks implied by not letting her in. As it was with bin Laden, she will now become increasingly difficult to monitor, and any valuable information she has is wasted. Even on his own terms, Paul Joseph Watson is still wrong. This is a position driven by emotion, not practicality. And just by the by, my heart goes out to every Muslim girl in the country who so much as looks like Shamima right now. Especially the ones having to go to school with the kind of guys who watch Paul Joseph Watson videos because, well, you know. And I don't like doing this, but I imagine Paul is one of the few men left on Earth who still thinks it's clever to reference Orwell, so 2-minute hate, double think, Squealer the pig, fuck you.
You know I don't make sources up.